Chapter 51. Layla's nose would bleed sometimes. Inej said it was because Oli was using his power, but Layla still didn't understand what that meant. All she knew is that she had seen her brother near the tree in the desert, and something had happened when he had touched her. If Ulian and Inej were right, that had been the moment Oli had connected with her, binding her life to his. Inej had kept them marching until sunset. Ulian perched on his shoulder, so they were limited only by the reach of Layla's stride and her own dwindling energy. The march had been brutal at first, but eventually the stitch in her side had subsided, and her feet went from sore to numb. She had pushed through the pain until it had subsided, as if her body had given up telling her how exhausted she was. The birds had been the only thing that brought her anything even hinting at joy. They were strange and gentle-looking, with arms as soft as dish rags. Wings is what Ulian called them, and by some magic that Ulian swore wasn't magic, they skittered about in the air. They stayed aloft like fire smoke, their movements a blur as they whirred about among the treetops. Eventually, though, as the hours drew on and the sun began to set, the birds had gone, and the little joy that they brought had gone too. The miles took their toll on Layla's chest, knees, and feet. The air grew colder and drier. "Are you certain we should not camp?" Ulian asked, his voice low. "Tomorrow," Inej grunted. "We'll be in the mountains then. I know a place or two." "It's cold," Layla said. Her cracked lips leaked blood into her mouth, and her whole face was unfeeling. If not for the cloak that Inej had given her, she'd have spent half her energy shivering her way through the wood. "It shouldn't snow till we're in the mountains," Inej said. "We're making good time, lass." Layla didn't think she could push on until tomorrow night. They trudged uphill almost constantly. It would only get worse as they got closer to the foothills of the mountain. She would never make it, and despite his words, Layla knew she slowed the Velk down, distorting the way that he calculated time and distance as he tried to compensate for her shorter gait. He tried not to show it, but he was growing restless, moving so slowly, often doubling back to Layla when he'd gone too far, sometimes pausing and pretending to investigate the forest around them. Ulian, still perched on Inej's shoulders, adjusted his spectacles. "Going around is going to take quite some time, but perhaps if we go through—" "No," Inej said, "even if I glimpse the wall. If I even glimpse the wall, then we've gotten too close. We go around. It would be more direct, and warmer, too." "Aye, and unstable. Without the witch as a focal point, it'll be volatile, manic." "Conjecture. It may just slowly slip back into time and space, becoming harmless." "Whatever it'll be, it won't be harmless," Inej snorted. "What are you two going on about?" Layla called, trying to catch up with Inej, who had the habit of walking faster when he got distracted. And the dark wasn't helping matters. Layla kept tripping over roots, stubbing her boot on the ever-increasing collection of sharp rocks sticking up from the dirt. And moreover, the elevation kept changing. They'd go uphill for a time, then stumble down a slope which stretched on for a few dozen paces, then back up again. Ulian twisted a look at her. "Our guide is taking us the long way around." "Oi," Layla said. "If there's a shorter way, shouldn't we—" Inej spat to the side, the weight of saliva heavy enough to hit the ground with a loud splat. "It ain't shorter if he gets you killed, and Ul shouldn't believe everything he reads." Layla said nothing. She wanted to offer her thoughts, to be able to say, "Oh, we should do this, or we should do that." But she found she only had questions. Questions that she felt too afraid to give voice, to give life to, because she might get answers that scared her more than not knowing. She felt like the same girl standing before the tree line, terrified of what lay beyond. A branch snapped in the distance. Inej stopped, and Layla walked into him, her head banging on the bottom of his pack. "Ow!" "Shh!" Layla could hear the rustling of Inej's pack hitting the ground, Ulian's boots landing on leaves beside it. "Inej," Layla started, but he thrust his hand before her, blocking out the faint starlight like a basket dropped over her head. She got the message, and she stayed quiet. A moment later, the starlight reappeared, and Inej moved away. leaving Ulian and Layla crouching in the open between a scattering of trees like black pillars. Her skin crawled, her spine tingled, as if at any moment a beast or knife would be upon her. Inej moved with a kind of quiet, impressive for his size, but that still wasn't truly silent. There was no hiding the 24 leaves and the occasional stick which crunched beneath every step of his trunk-sized boots. Layla tried to keep her breathing calm, but her hand shook as it held onto the handle of her sword. It wasn't any easier now that she knew what a fight felt like. If anything, it was harder. She blinked away a tear before it could fall, sucked in a breath, and forced herself to steady. Ulian shuffled, pressing his back into Layla's shoulder. He wasn't crouched like her, but stood as tall as he could, his head swiveling about, his breathing heavy. He still smelled of the downwind, of a good hearth fire, and fruit-infused ale. "Do you think he sees something?" Ulian whispered. "I'm just praying there's nothing to see." "Wisely said." Layla breathed into her hand, trying to warm them up, to loosen her fingers. If there were Yelmez around, Layla didn't expect to see them. They were called the Dark Ones for a reason. If they had finally caught up to them, then luck alone had given them a warning. The Yelmez must have been careless to break a stick so loud Layla and the others could hear it. That was, if the sound had even been caused by a Yelmez at all. It could have been one of the animals, perhaps some large, what had Ulian called it? Squirrel? Inej crept away toward the direction of the sound, the tip of his spear reflecting the starlight, his silhouette distinct among the trees. Layla had the sense that he knew he was too loud, that maybe he was trying to lead any enemies away. Layla squinted harder, trying to force her eyes to see more in the pitch of night. How Inej saw anything at all, how he had been able to guide them, she couldn't imagine. No moon had emerged, and the dim glow of stars couldn't penetrate the heavy ceiling of branches above. It was all black upon black, a game of shades and not colors. Movement caught Layla's eye. It seemed strange, but out of the corner of her vision, she thought she saw something like an ember floating in the air, a few paces behind Inej, a red light that swirled just for an instant. Gone now, only blackness remaining where she had seen it. Though now that she looked, the blackness shifted, and it moved slowly, but Layla stood and cried out, "Inej!" He twisted as lightning crackled and flashed. Layla covered her eyes to block out the burst of light and thunder that boomed in her ears. Wood let out a screaming crack, and when Layla looked up, she saw a massive tree falling slowly downward toward the Velk, its trunk alight in unnatural white flame. Inej blocked a sword blow with his shield, then threw himself out of the way as the tree slammed onto the ground. The leaves on the forest floor proved themselves as kindling, and a roaring fire sprang up, throwing light and shadow, heat and smoke in every direction. "Maker, help us!" Ulian stood with a knife in his hand, his jaw hanging slack, his skin pale in the firelight. What the fire had revealed, Layla wished would have stayed unseen. They were surrounded. 24 Yelmez stood around them in wide circle, their cowls low. They each held a blade in hand, but they did not move and they did not attack. The one who had almost taken Inej in the back held a defensive stance as the giant brought himself back to his feet. Layla shed the cloak and ran toward Inej, Ulian close behind. She couldn't hide behind him now, not like before. The Yelmez fanned out all around, encircling them, penning them in. "Your sword, lass," Inej said, rolling his shoulders. Layla's hands shook so hard that she struggled to get a firm enough grip to wrench her sword free of the sheath, though once she held the blade, her nerves did steel a little. The weight of it made her feel more in control, if only slightly. The Yelmez nearest Inej pulled his cowl back to reveal a complexion not unlike Layla's own. His hair weaved into thick braids, the brim of his nose wide and flat. His voice flowed like oil over smooth rocks. "And over the Kiefka." "What did I tell you about pitch?" Inej snarled. "I don't speak it." "We can smell the girl." The girl. Layla had believed Ulian and Inej when they had told her that the Yelmez would be after her, but hearing one of them say it made her shiver. Inej snorted. "Ain't a chance in all the hells." The man cocked his head to one side, tapping the flat of his blade against his thigh thoughtfully. The fire behind him kept spreading, but far slower than Layla thought it should. Nothing about that fire appeared natural. It was too bright and too controlled. It wasn't like any fire that she had seen before. This felt more wrong and more threatening. "I can make a deal, Velk," the Dark One said. His voice sounded so soft, so easy to listen to. "I have the authority. You may say I have the Hekveda's ear." "Save it," Inej said, but Layla's mind reeled. Why did the Elmas talk to them? And what was this all about, a deal? And whose ear? The Elmas pointed his sword toward Ulian. "I'll spare you and the little one." "Little one?" Ulian said, shifting his knife. "Well, Inej shifted his spear and said, "After I gut you, remind me to tell you the story of the last time I made a deal with a demon." "Ah," the Elmas chuckled. "Is that how it happened then?" He pointed to Inej, then gestured to his own eye. "After just one little deal, they cut you off, just like that?" Inej said nothing. "Do you miss it? The sight, I mean." He lifted his hand, and the fire behind him shot up 12 feet. "I would miss this. Those old artifacts you carry aren't the same. Your little shield just reminds you, it teases you. It just makes you want it more." Layla shifted. "Inej, what's he talking about?" Inej shook his head. "Just forked tongues and lies. Best ignore him, or you'll end up just burned." "Inej, is it?" The Dark One stepped forward casually, nearly close enough for his sword to reach Inej. "I can make you a god again, Inej. I can give you your power back, and then I can give you more. It won't be hard. The Hekvedas has done greater things. It'd be easy, merely a simple..." Inej stabbed out with his spear and caught the man beneath the chin, running him straight through his throat. Inej yanked his spear backward, and the man collapsed to his knees, the color fading from his eyes like a star winking out of the sky. "Run!" Inej yelled as he stormed forward, Layla and Ulian on his heels. The fire roared to their left, a pair of Yelmes right in front of them, but the enemy had been caught off guard, moving just a touch too slow. Every step Layla took, something changed. She leapt over the dead Yelmes, and that seemed to trigger every other Dark One around her, urging them to charge forward, their hands cackling with blue energy in that strange red light. Her hair stood on end, her skin crawled with goosebumps as the whole wood filled with energy and the promise of lightning. Her next step was nearly into flames. The fire spread like someone had poured cooking oil by the buckets onto the forest. The Yelmes Inej had killed had been controlling it, keeping it at bay, but with his death it broke loose. By Layla's third step, Inej had stabbed another Yelmes and thrown him like a doll into the fire. A woman off to Layla's right ran toward her, trying to cut her off from Inej, her skin looking gray in the brilliant light of the fire, her yellow eyes burning bright. Red lights danced excitedly over her free hand, which she pulled back the way she did before shooting lightning out. There was no fourth step, for Ulian dragged Layla down into the dirt as Inej's shield sailed over their heads. Screams of pain erupted from behind her, where the shield must have ripped through the enemy. Then Inej stood over them, cutting off the charging woman, clashing spear to sword. "Up," Inej called. "Now!" Ulian grabbed Layla's hand and pulled her up and forward. A stretch of ground lay before them, free of Yelmes. The fire worsened to their left, so hot that it began to burn the side of Layla's face. Inej stayed behind them, fighting with a spear in one hand and a knife in the other. By the time Layla had gone 3 more paces and looked backward, a pair of Yelmes were already dead. But the enemy pressed Inej back toward the fire. "Come on," Layla screamed. "Inej, run!" But it was too late. He couldn't run. He had been surrounded, fire to his back, Yelmes stretched out before him. Somehow he had moved his weapon with such speed that he blocked blows even as 4 or 5 pushed in on him at once. But hope had gone now, and even Layla could see that. Inej stepped back again toward the spreading flame, unable to do anything more than block the incoming blows. "Miss Riker," Ulian yanked at her arm. "They're coming." 4 had broken off from the rest, ignoring Inej to come for her. Her. Who was she that Inej would fight for her, would die for her? She knew there was more going on, that she was connected to a power she couldn't understand, and still she could not ignore that everyone she had loved had abandoned her. Her father, her mother, and her brother all had gone and left her behind, whether they meant to or not. But not the tanner. Layla, Ulian cried out, trying to pull her along. She looked at the bartender, saw herself reflected in his eyes. She could be like her family, and she could turn and run right now. Or A word appeared in her mind, demanding her attention, forcing her to see every Layla she could be. Palmadits. It was the language of the wild, of woodspeak. A word her brother had taught her. A word with power. A word that forced her to remember who she could be and not just who she was. Layla pulled her hand free from Ulian and raised her sword up before the oncoming Yelmez. She would die. She was certain of it. But she wouldn't abandon Inej.